York University. Oh, yes. Thank you. So York itself is located on the territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and the treaty holders, the Mississauga of the New Credit. For those of us located in so-called Canada and across North America, or anyone living on lands that were invaded and stolen by incoming settlers, we're living in a context of settler colonialism, which in its broadest sense aims to eliminate and replace Indigenous peoples with settlers. This context, of course, as many of you know, shares many common threads with our panel today. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes to set the stage for the discussion, and then I'll interview the panelists, or I'll introduce the panelists. So just a few days ago, many of you might have seen that the executive director of the World Food Program, Cindy McCain, declared, in what is perhaps unsurprising to most of us given the scale of US and Western-backed Israeli violence and destruction, she declared that there is now a full-blown famine in northern Gaza, and this is moving south. The United Nations recently reported that 90% of people trapped in Gaza are regularly going whole days without food. We've heard all of the horrific stories of infant starvation, of people having to eat animal feed and drink polluted water to survive. According to satellite imagery, almost half of Gaza's tree cover has been destroyed or damaged since October 7th, and around a third of greenhouses have been demolished, with 90% being destroyed in the north. Tanks and trucks have decimated orchards, field crops, and olive groves, replacing them with military infrastructure. The artillery, heavy bombing, and demolition is a major threat to the air, soil, and groundwater. And the invasion has filled Gaza with chemicals, pollution, debris, heavy metals, and its destruction of infrastructure and the near entire displacement of the Palestinian people has created a growing sewage and waste crisis, with people having to live alongside informal landfills and waste dumps. Many people are now using the term ecocide to try and capture the depth and breadth of destruction and disaster that's taking place. We're witnessing such immense devastation of human and other human life in Gaza at the hands of the colonial regime. For those of us that study food politics, justice, and sovereignty, we're used to thinking of food in the context of colonialism and capitalism, or many of us are, but we still haven't connected all the dots. In Palestine, we're seeing such an acute and severe version of the longer-term imperial and capitalist assault on food sovereignty. Even before the most recent invasion and genocide following October 7th, going back to the 1948 Nakba and before, alongside decades of Palestinian agricultural destruction, Israeli settlements, blockades, walls, checkpoints, and restrictions, these have all made it incredibly difficult for Palestinians to grow food and feed their own people. Food growing was still happening, of course, and we'll hear more about this in the panel, but it was happening in spite of Israeli surveillance, punishment, and settler expansion and incursion. While the scale and technologies of violence and destruction that we're witnessing are uniquely horrific, the shared threads of maniacal and imperial logics and strategies are present. The raising of farmland, the killing and starving of food animals, destroying tree crops, decimating internal food economies, and barring food imports and aid, all while conducting ideological and educational campaigns of settler supremacy rooted in arguments of settler land improvement by, quote, making the desert bloom. Many of these underlying logics are familiar here in so-called Canada. The creation of an apartheid legal system through the Indian Act, the doctrine of discovery, which gave Christians so-called divine rights to Indigenous lands, the pass system, the settler campaign to destroy bison herds and replace them with cattle, the creation of the RCMP, which was established to subdue Indigenous people when they were majority populations on the prairies. Of course, residential schools established to, in the words of its creators, kill the Indian and the child. In all of this, Canadians continue to be taught that Indigenous people don't actually exist. Just last week, Ontario Minister of Mines, George Peary, declared that Northern Ontario is empty and begging for mining exploration. This settler, colonial, imperial, and supremacist urge to exterminate If they can't civilize or assimilate, then exterminate. This has taken many forms across space and time, and it's what we're seeing today in Palestine at the hands of the Israeli regime, backed by the US and imperial allies. This is the genocidal project that the brave students leading over 100 Palestine solidarity encampments all over the world are opposing. Horrified by the status quo, seeking justice, equity, and divestment from the system of war and violence that we and our institutions are complicit in, students and youth have always been on the right side of history on this stuff, and they are showing us the way again today. So these are some of the connections we aim to weave together in today's panel. First, we'll have about 20 to 25 minutes for each of the panelists to present, and then we'll do a few rounds of questions. And just before I introduce the panelists, I want to thank my fellow members of the Canadian Association of Food Studies, Ad Hoc Committee on Palestine and the Right to Food, and the Executive Committee of CAPS for supporting us in our work. So the first panelist will be Justin Poder, who runs the Anti-Empire Project podcast and YouTube channel, which I strongly recommend. I really love your podcast, Justin. And he's also the author of Siege Breakers, a 2019 speculative novel where Palestinians win a war of liberation. He's been to Gaza and the West Bank and was a volunteer with the International Solidarity Movement in 2002. Yafa Al-Masri is both a refugee and researcher. She has a PhD in human geography and an MSc in local development studies from the University of Padova, Italy. She's currently a postdoctoral research associate at the Department of Geography at Durham University in the UK. And she's also the leader of Decolonizing Development Research Work Group at the EU-funded Decolonizing Development Cost Action. Finally, Max Agil is a senior fellow at the University of Ghent and an associated researcher at the Tunisian Observatory for Food Sovereignty and Environment. He's an associate editor at Agrarian South and Journal of Labor and Society, and has written for the Journal of Peasant Studies and the Review of African Political Economy. His book, A People's Green New Deal, was published in 2021 with Pluto Press, which is also excellent. Okay, great. So I'll just let the panelists take it away. Justin, why don't you start, and then we'll go over to Yafa and then Max, and then we'll be monitoring the Q&A as well, and can then do a round of questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, especially for inviting me and organizing this. Thank you to this working group. It's such a good idea. It's exactly what we need to be doing right now. This is the kind of thing we can do, and it's what we have to do. And I'm really honored to be part of this. So thank you very much. This is just some research I've been putting together as I've gone through history for my historical podcast. And every time I see something like this, I make a note of it. And it turns out there's an incredible amount about food in the history of imperialism. And what I wanted to call my talk today was like something along the lines of the bitter fruit of colonialism. And it's a double meaning, but it's actually not appropriate because there's no fruit of imperialism at all. Imperialism and imperialists hate fruit, as you'll see in my talk. So I wanted to start with a article from April 7th by Bilal Noor al-Din. On the cradle, it's called Israel's War on Lebanon's Trees. And the article talks about the Israeli scorched earth policy towards Lebanon. And everything they're doing in Lebanon is 10 times worse in Palestine. But Lebanon, they've damaged 6,000 hectares of agricultural land, 2,000 completely, destroyed 60,000 olive trees, some of which were 300 years old, as well as citrus, banana, and almond trees, fruitful and non-fruitful trees, and vast areas were completely destroyed. That's in Lebanon. There's a quote from an expert from Lebanon's Southern Green Association. There is a clear, deliberate burning of the forest cover, destruction of olive vines and fruit trees, and contamination of the soil, which explains the intensive use of white phosphorus. So it's this is not unique, as I'm gonna get into. Sarah, you saved me a lot of time by describing the famine in Palestine, in Gaza. This is the destruction of fields, the poisoning of fields, the killing of fishermen, the destruction of olive trees, the destruction of orange trees. Again, fruit trees are especially hated. When I got into Gaza through the Erez checkpoint in 2002, the first thing I saw was a bulldozer in the distance bulldozing orange trees. And when I stopped to take a picture, an Israeli soldier kind of called down from the wall that I was not to take pictures. So sort of like the supervised destruction of fruit trees specifically is a big part of what Israel is doing. But we can keep going in the Arab world and talk about all of the different destruction of sovereign food systems throughout that part of the world. There's hunger in Syria now. Syria was never, generally not a place of hunger since independence, but it is a place of hunger now because of the sanctions. In Iraq, people who were involved in the anti-war movement for Iraq, the major anti-war issue before the 2003 war was the sanctions on Iraq. And you may remember the famous quote from Madeleine Albright about on 60 Minutes when they asked her what they thought of the price, what she thought of the price of what, being too high, maybe with 500,000 children dead up to that point. It was in the 90s from sanctions, preventable deaths due to hunger and preventable disease. And she said, yeah, it's a high price, but we think it's worth it. Egypt is dependent on US grain for various reasons that I'll get into. And even Iran, in the days of high imperialism, there was a huge famine in Persia just before World War One. This was, Persia was sort of forced into the imperial system through a series of wars in the 19th century. People don't really think of Persia as one of these places that had a big famine, but people in Iran, they know, they do. They have that memory. So all of this, uh, all of this destruction of the sovereign food system in all of the countries of the so-called Middle East is completely supported by the US and Canada, who used famine to get to where they are. The power system in our continent is also very much based on this kind of destruction. So if you look at the book Clearing the Plains and other books around that, Canada is a story of settler colonialism, as Sarah said, but also it's a story of extinction of keystone species in an ecosystem is how Canada attacks Indigenous people, or historically. So they brought various plagues through the fur trade, the Hudson Bay Company, one of these British imperial companies. You'll hear a little bit more about one of these famous companies in a minute. Then they brought about the extinction of the beaver through the fur trade, the destruction of that whole economy, which they had sponsored. Then they moved into the West and brought about the extinction of the buffalo. And the famine that ensued there, as Sarah mentioned, was what they used in the 1880s to finally force the Indigenous people of the West onto the tiny reserves that are now being encroached on further by the Canadian state. At that time, in the 19th century, Canada was a part of the British Empire, no more and no less. And the British Empire, of course, got to where it is through famine. The Irish famine, which was actually a genocide in the 1840s, that was it's diminished to be called a potato famine, but Britain was exporting Irish food from Ireland during that famine. That was a genocide. It was used for many different it fulfilled many different objectives for the British Empire, and they used it also to export a lot of the people of Ireland, including to Canada and the US. Now, the British East India Company was also a company of famines. It was, you can look at Mike Davis's work, the late Victorian Holocausts, but there's also Jason Hickel, and they make estimates every now and then that keep getting bigger. So I had read a couple years ago that the British were responsible for 30 million deaths due to famine, but there's a more recent paper estimating 100 million just over a 40-year period of excess deaths between 1880 and 1920. This is Jason Hickel again. Famines started as soon as Britain took over, the British East India Company took over revenue collection in Bengal after 1757, and it didn't ever stop until independence in India. Then there's hunger, there's a period of hunger, there's a different kind of system, but this kind of British Empire style famine was a model of that the British Empire imposed on the world as they were creating the world market in food grain. So they would get grain from Canada, grain from India. There's a quote from Orwell where he says, you know, if an Englishman's arm is thicker than the average Indian person's leg, that's because that's one of the things that we get to enjoy from our empire. And he wasn't exactly against the empire, by the way, but he just said, you know, we might as well be honest about it and the consequences of it. But the British Empire and the market, the global market in food, the point of that whole system was to exercise power, control over the empire using food as a weapon, and also to profit from it by moving the grain around. And these were never separate concepts, profit and power and empire. They're always pursued together. You can imagine an economist could make a conceptual model that there's a way to pursue profit without imposing power and starvation on other people. But in actual history, that's not how things work. There were famines in China in that high period of imperialism that Mike Davis writes about in late Victorian Holocaust, and some big ones in South America too, Brazil and others, as they were all integrated into this British imperial global grain economy that the British were managing. And this means if you're going to turn food into a commodity and food into a weapon, that means the greatest enemy is this horrific thing that can just provide food, like this terrible, terrible thing that just stands there and provides food for people, which is a tree, a fruit tree. Imperialists find this, the way imperialists write about this and the way imperialists destroy these trees is incredible. You come across these quotes, the way when they invaded Afghanistan in the I think it was 1839, sometime around then, they destroyed the mulberry trees by just they said we found a great way to destroy them just by cutting the bark around a ring around the tree. It's great because it destroys the tree, destroys the fruit. The Afghans get really depressed, and we don't even have to cut the tree down. The cedar trees of Lebanon, the olive trees of Lebanon in Palestine, the orange trees of Palestine. There's as I was researching this, people on Twitter, I put it out on Twitter, and then people on Twitter told me about others. Date palms in Iraq, the French destroying fruit trees in Algeria, the United States destroying Diné Navajo peach trees in the 1860s, Portuguese colonists destroying fruit trees in the Angola Ovambo floodplain. And then, of course, we have Vietnam. We have Agent Orange, nuclear tests on the Bikini Islands. Universal Studios during the writer's strike trimmed all the trees along one of these boulevards to deny shade to picketers during the writing strike. So the war on trees is pervasive and never lets up. And the other thing, there's one of the most racist imperialist writers was Thomas Carlyle. And one of the most racist essays he wrote was one of the most racist essays ever written, which is called The Discourse on the N-Word Question. So if you ever want to read the most racist essay, this could be it. And one of the things that he writes really passionately about is if Black people have gardens, they can just grow pumpkins and grow the food that they need, and then they won't work hard. And working them hard is the point of imperialism. And so the idea that these people might just be able to live off of the abundance of nature is really, really inspires incredible hatred and destructive impulse among imperialists. So I talked about the British system. There's also the American system. So the American imperial grain economy, it's a little bit different. Generally, it's a little bit more multilateral looking. It's got a few more components because it was designed after the waves of decolonization in Africa and Asia. So it starts with the World Bank, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the agricultural corporations running amok all over the global South countries that allow them, which is most of them. The agricultural corporations buy land. The World Bank encourages countries to borrow to invest in these cash crops that have to earn a certain amount of foreign exchange to pay back the loans at a given level of interest. The minute you choose these crops, which you've invested in at the encouragement of the World Bank and the agricultural advisors that come along with it, you've lost food sovereignty, right? Subsistence agriculture is the land for that is taken for growing cash crops. And then there's another problem with the agricultural economy, which you scholars of food studies know, which is when you have a good harvest, prices actually go down, which because there's an abundance of the commodity if you have it designed around a commodity market. So you can't ever pay back those loans. The country becomes indebted, and so does the individual farmer. Lots of places farmers commit suicide. The countries restructure their economy and hand over more and more of their assets to these same US and allied corporations. Then, when people are hungry, there's a new system, which is food aid provided by the US, which is itself a complex and really, really malign and evil system, in which food aid is given when there are good crops and denied when crops are bad, all to exert a really detailed control over people and people's lives and economies. So, but then this also gives a host of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, control over the social sector that's just been destroyed through the restructuring. And if a government comes that doesn't like this and isn't easily overthrown, that's when sanctions come in. And sanctions, again, easy to impose, and hunger quickly follows. So food is a weapon at so many different stages of this, and all of it being used to ensure the control of the system by the imperialists. And what is all of this doing? It's all imposing a monocultural and ecologically destructive agricultural model to replace the many ingenious food systems of indigenous cultures. And we can go like continent by continent. There's some amazing work on Australia, one book called The Greatest Plantation on Earth, another one called Dark Emu, which talks about their extensive management of the landscape, the Aboriginal management of the landscape using fire, a lot of fire, but the concept of like the entire continent being a single food system under indigenous management. Hawaii has a totally different style in a wet ecosystem using ponds and fish ponds and taro and a whole bunch of different foods. Their agricultural systems of the West Coast, incredible indigenous systems destroyed fairly recently in US history. The Eastern US, there's a book by William Cronon, some of you probably know, and he talks about, there's a chapter called Seasons of Want and Plenty. That's another agricultural system which had an incredible seasonal abundance that settlers didn't understand and deliberately destroyed by releasing pigs and dogs. They had a whole ecological warfare way of encroaching on indigenous lands and destroying their food systems. You probably heard about from Charles Mann, 1491, Mexico, the system of lakes at Tenochtitlan described by the Spanish conquistadors, extensive markets. The city was cleaner and more populous than European cities. There are canals everywhere. It's like a city in a lake, kind of unimaginable what they destroyed there. And then the Amazon from the same book, 1491 by Charles Mann, it was inhabited for longer than it was a rainforest. So there's evidence of human habitation that basically suggests that the Amazon rainforest, the wildest place you can imagine, is actually a co-creation with an indigenous civilizations that inhabited it. So you think of a wild landscape as a North American environmentalist, and it turns out that it's actually an indigenous cultural co-created landscape. And so bringing it back to Palestine, this is what we see in Palestine is the war over the land, the war over the food system, and the destruction of a food system as a primary weapon of the colonizer or the imperialist to try to impose their domination. And the solution is clear enough. In all of these cases, there's a synthesis of modern knowledge and technology that is constantly being appropriated by indigenous nations and First Nations. And when they get their land back, they are quickly able to do amazing things when sovereignty is there. So it's very this is just it's as stark and clear a war on indigenous people and indigenous food systems as we could possibly have witnessed in any time in the past 500 years, and it's we're witnessing it now. So I think I'll stop there and hand it over to the next speaker.
Thanks, Justin. Yafa, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. No, it's not finding. Okay, here it is. Okay, thank you for being here today, for organizing this, and for Justin for starting a really important discussion on the war on land, the war on food, in the different settings, but especially on Palestine and Lebanon. We have been seeing these images of displacement recently when the news on Gaza, and we know by now that displacement is not something that is new to the lives of Palestinians. We are seeing it today in Gaza, but it is actually something that has been happening, especially in Palestine, for decades. Whether it's something that we've seen in the images of the Nakba in 1948, or whether it's something that we saw a few years back in East Jerusalem and Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood as people were forcefully evicted. It's something we're constantly seeing in the West Bank and Masaf Yatta in the occupied territories. And it's something that we're constantly now seeing to Rafah, from Rafah, and so on. And a lot of times when we see these images, we ask ourselves a lot of questions, but one of the questions that come up on our minds is, what happens to these people? What happens after displacement? Do people ever get to go back home? Are the homes even there, or are they completely demolished? And how many times are people going to rebuild their homes? Do they get to make new homes, and do they just keep waiting for an opportunity to go back home? So these are some of the questions that I grapple with personally, and in my research in general about Palestine. And even though I might not be able to answer them right now for what is specifically happening in Gaza, as we really cannot guess what's going to happen next, but at least I could try to answer some of these questions as inspired from the many different cases of displacement that happened to Palestinians over the past 7 decades. In 1948, in the Nakba, we know about the forced displacement of around 750,000 Palestinians to nearby areas. And it is estimated that around 100,000 of these Palestinians were displaced to Lebanon, which is the country right across the borders to the north. Now, when Palestinians arrived to Lebanon, they became refugees, but they could never become naturalized or legalized, meaning that they can never obtain Lebanese citizenship. They can never get all the rights that come with the citizenship, which is entering the job market, accessing public health care, accessing education, or any services that are provided by the states. And basically, all of that meant that people are some way, due to these socioeconomic exclusion factors, are locked up in their camps, and they are to a large extent separated from the host community. And according to the statistics of UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinians, in the last statistic they had in 2022, they mentioned that 93% of Palestinian refugees were below the poverty line and 62% suffered from severe food insecurity. So in summary, the situation in regarding the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon is this separation and this state of exclusion from both a home, a native land, and the exclusion from a host community and a temporary home. So they are excluded in both spaces. I try to argue and look at how Palestinian refugees attempt to combat this double exclusion from their native lands and from the host community through food and through food making practices. And I try to think of the networks of sisterhoods, these networks that bring together women in refugee camps, and how these informal networks of food that are formed through the sisterhoods, they are a way to safeguard the memories and the practices related to food in relation to certain villages or native villages that the Palestinians still feel like they belong to. So these practices and these memories are safeguarded and passed on through cooking, food making practices, but also food sharing. In this research specifically, I do rely a lot on my autoethnographic recordings. So I reflect a lot on my own life as a Palestinian who grew up in a small refugee camp in Lebanon that is called Burj al-Barajneh. So there's a lot of stories, memories, and personal experiences, which might not always be so easy to talk about without romanticizing or without being nostalgic in a way. So there's a lot of perks always to speaking about a context we know so well, but there's also limitations to that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I share with you these stories. The photo you see is from my refugee camp, and it's a photo of my mother and the women in her life. My mother, like myself, was born and raised and lived her entire life in Burj al-Barajneh refugee camp, which is a space of not more than 0.2 kilometers square. And because of that, my mother had the exact same friends her entire life. They were the people she went to school with. They were exactly the same people as her neighbor. They were the people that went through weddings and childbirth and every single milestone with her. They were the people she saw every day. They met, drank coffee the way that people drink it in Palestine, not in Lebanon, which is equal parts of cardamom and coffee. They talked about what they want to cook for that day. And while they're talking, they're learning about each other's villages and their dishes and their soils and their climates. So when they're telling stories about home through food, it just seems so casual and it seems very unpolitical. So when they criticize one of my mother's sisters by saying that her food is too spicy, and she defends it by narrating Gaza's history and the history of Gaza as a city that once had a big role in the spice trade between the Arabic Peninsula, from Saudi Arabia and other countries all the way to Europe. And when she explains how Gaza had one of the biggest ports that were facilitating trade between Asia and Europe, it just sounds very casual, but there are so many political lessons that can be learned by us kids who are hearing that. And once the women decide what they're going to cook that day, they head to the market to buy the ingredients for the food. And then the women in the market who are selling the ingredients and the herbs and the plants, they start telling us about each plant. And one of the plants you see in the photo is the black kala, which is a plant that is often feared by animals. They don't really go that close to it because it is known for having high levels of toxicity and the potential to cause irritation. But then the women explained to us that this plant is actually known as the Palestinian plant because it has such a big history of being used in the Palestinian cuisine. It was used as a herbal remedy to treat stomach disorders, but it is also known as a very delicious meal. And then they teach us how to clean it, how to remove the stem, even from the leaves, and then rubbing it with lemon and salt on boiling it, and then all the toxins are neutralized. And even though back then I used to think that was just a marketing tactic or just a trick to tell us it's a Palestinian plan, it was just something that they did to sell whatever plans they had. But I later, decades later, decided to read about it, and I did realize that the scientific name of the black kala is Arum palestinum, which is the reference that it is a plant that has a significant history for the Palestinian community. And sometimes when we're not buying the herbs, but we are going to pick them ourselves from landscapes nearby, we would go to collect thyme, mallow, and sage. And when we're picking these herbs, my mother and the sisterhoods are telling us always stories of why we use their plants, where their names come from. For example, the sage, which in Arabic or Palestinian dialect is called maramiye or mariamiye, actually means that of Mary. And they tell us how the legend says that Mary, Virgin Mary, used to collect the sage every time baby Jesus was sick. And she would boil it for him, and it would make his tummy ache go away. And if he's having any digestive problems, it would always solve all his digestive problems. And so the Palestinian community kind of took that as the most important remedy they could have, and they would put it in all their herbs and boil it almost every day. And so it became known as the plant of Mary, that of Mary, which later became Mariamiye. Even when we weren't picking herbs and we were buying ready-made ingredients such as the olive oil, there's always the intention to buy things in relation to Palestinian lands from which we are forcefully separated. So when we are speaking of olive oils, the rule of the thumb is always to buy it from places that are the closest to the Palestinian borders. So the more you go south, the better the quality of the olives and the better the quality of the oil. And they go on to explain how this is because there are certain geographical factors such as full sun exposure or temperatures that never drop under 15 degrees even in the winter. And these are the right elements that give you good harvest of olives, and then that makes the best olive oil. And when they're explaining this, you are imagining what the climate in Palestine looks like both in the summer and the winter. You're imagining the landscape. You have a visual of what kind of plants and trees grow in these villages that we've never visited, but also how hot is it, how warm is it, even in the winter and the summer, and you are almost there in a way. So through these talks, through these settings of sisterhoods, there was this atmosphere of food as knowing, making food as a form of teaching. And these lands that were separated from, the ones we're denied access to, the ones we're deprived from knowing and becoming real native to, we can now access them through this passed on knowledge, through this imagined knowledge, through these stories, through these shared practices that are being passed on from generation to generation. But there's also another aspect to this practice of collective cooking, and it is the way it empowers the sharing of the food. According to the UNRWA statistics, which I mentioned in the beginning, almost half of the families that are suffering from food insecurity, they ask people, how do you cope with it? And almost half of them, more than half, said that they actually cope with it through food sharing, which means that they either eat at other families' houses or some other families are giving them food. So these women who cook together, who plan out their meals together, they also share ingredients, they share meals, so that families that are going through struggles would not only go to sleep hungry, but also they wouldn't need to compromise on how culturally relevant is the food they're eating. So they're providing each other with these elements and ingredients that allow families to still stick to their Palestinian identity in exile. So they would either exchange ingredients, share ingredients, or cook just enough to cover their family and other families. And what is really interesting about this sharing mechanism is that to some extent, it also provides, and Justin also pointed out to this very briefly, it provides a way of attaining food security that is, one, more effective because it does target and reach a lot of families who don't really want to go beg or ask the humanitarian aid for food. So there's a lot of families that are discreet, and poverty is not something that people are proud of announcing. So there are a lot of families that are not proud about announcing it, and the humanitarian aid does not reach them. And through this intimate network here, the food reaches everyone. But also it's a much more dignified way because people are saying that I don't want to go to humanitarian aid and publicly prove and defend my thesis in front of a foreign aid employee that I do need or I do deserve assistance, because we are at times of shrinking humanitarian aid where assistance is being more and more limited. But in these alternative humanitarianism settings, in these settings of informal networks of care, there's this intimate knowledge of each other's lives and of each other's struggles or hardships and needs. So refugees don't need to publicly demonstrate that they are suffering. They already know what each other are going through, and therefore they know where and how to help and in which ways. So basically, we have these forms of exclusion from the native land and from access to basic rights in a host state that does not recognize refugees as equal to citizens. And this causes this lack of access to native lands, to heritage, to identity, to all of the knowledge that comes with that. And you also have this exclusion resulting in poverty and food insecurity. And the way the community deals with it is with collective cooking and this collective setting around food and around the potentiality of food. And this produces so many practices of resistance, and whether they are this transfer of knowledge about the native land's ecology and the native land's plants, and which plants grew and what happened in that setting and under which conditions and under which climate and under which soil or water conditions that allowed that. There is that knowledge that is being transferred there. But then there's also another form of transfer, which is the material transfer of food and the food ingredients for the food insecure families. And in general, all of that collective cooking and its impact is somehow supplying the community with access to the land in some emotional form. It's allowing access to food at times of difficulty, but it's also, more importantly, allowing access to culturally important foods. So it's allowing people to still connect to the land through the food. So the sisterhoods act as this network of identification and transport of knowledge. And they allow, or they safeguard the access to food and access to culture through food. And these sharing practices also act as just resistance mechanism to the socioeconomic exclusion that is produced by both the Palestinian land disposition and the refugee policy of the state of Lebanon, but can also be practiced by many states. So cooking is this effort to claim space in both the homeland that is now colonized, and to also claim space in a new home or a place where you're trying to reside until you go home, a place where you're waiting. And in conclusion, you have these geographies of access to food for refugees that are mapped by host community policies, but also by settler colonialism. And these geographies of unequal access to food we realize they can be reshaped in radical forms by these informal networks. People know how to attain food justice, or how to at least strive or fight for food justice in some ways, and to maintain the cultural identity that they're looking for through food. So these informal food networks can be a direct tool that the Palestinians also employ in exile or in forced displacement in the face of land injustice, in the face of food injustice. And as a result, we see food becoming this essential component of radical movements for the right of return. And it's always important to remember that food always has such deep cultural significance because food, the lack of access to food is not just about the materiality of food, but it is about the lack of access to identity through food. So food insufficiency normally is something we talk about in terms of poverty and underdevelopment and suffering, but also food here, especially in this type of case, presents the belonging. It presents the right to the land. It presents how we know ourselves, how we know our rights to ancestral lands and to ancestral culture. I'm going to stop there. I hope I didn't leave you with more questions than what you had before I said that, but hopefully we'll get to talk about all of these things in the Q&A, and I'll leave the floor to Max.
Thanks, Yafa. And just before we move to Max, I just want to let folks know that you can add your questions into the Q&A, and we'll do a round of questions afterwards. And Max, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Yafa and Justin, for the presentations. So what I don't know how much I have to offer after that, but I'm going to try to talk a little bit about how we can think about the undermining of Arab food systems in over the last 50 years, and also some of the alternative options that have been put forward over the years in order to integrate agrarian questions and national liberation in terms of the Arab national liberation movement, with a particular focus on Palestine. So to start, I mean, I think one of the things that blocks from view the centrality sometimes of agriculture in the Arab region is how heavy is the footprint of imperialism, and in particular the degree to which the region is war torn, and precisely war torn by imperialism. And I think a second thing is that there could be a tendency by some people to consider the region unique or exceptionally violent. And contrary-wise to that, I think we should very much not only follow the traditional line of the Palestinian left in kind of understanding that Palestine is a symbol of a universal struggle for liberation, but also maybe follow the compass of, for example, Gustavo Petro, who warned basically that what's happening in Gaza is not at all exceptional. It's actually just a portent of what is to come for not only third world, but even poor people in the first world under the current dispensation of power and the kind of value systems and the systems of devaluing human life that are these value systems, that is capitalism and colonialism, entail. So I want to start actually by just stating something about why there's such misreading of the Arab agrarian question. And I think this occurs through a variety of mechanisms. I mean, first is not just that people see that region only through war, but that war actually destroys knowledge of agrarian systems themselves, right? War actually destroys the state institutions that are responsible for surveying and statistics gathering. War burns down libraries. War burns down research centers. War even burns down bookstores and used bookstores and private archives, or they, infamously, that the Palestinian archives have been looted and destroyed time and time again by the Israelis. And alongside war, countries become underdeveloped. Brain drain flushes intelligence from the national circulatory system, and with the neoliberalism that is the adjunct or the cousin or the consequence of the war themselves, institutions themselves seize rural surveys and censuses. And the region kind of loses the capacity to know itself, right? So I think this is actually something to keep in mind. Now, so I think now I want to talk a little bit about how I can see the kind of periodization of the Arab agrarian question, right? You know, from the 1700s to the 1800s is when informal colonial and European penetration into the Arab region began through the condominiums and capitulations and various other mechanisms of kind of hollowing out the sovereignty of the Arab region. Through rising debt in particular, but also other mechanisms, these states, although some of them tried to actually carry out sovereign development policies, in particular Egypt and Tunisia, they then became vulnerable to direct Western colonization, right? Which led to the primitive accumulation of land for European settlement, which occurred most severely in the sister struggles of Palestine and Algeria, but of course occurred to an important extent in Morocco, Libya, leading to a massive genocide and settler alienation of land, Tunisia, where I'm living. Also led to the reprimarization of the Arab productive structure, blocked industrialization, and led to their use as military bases and as fodder for European inter-imperialist wars or wars of colonial counterinsurgency, right? So this led to widespread primitive accumulation. The consequence is that these settler colonies or the franchise colonies, for example, in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, began to produce export crops to the benefit of European capital, leading to a widespread process of semi-proletarianization of the Arab populations. People became workers on European estates. A very small number became industrial proletariat, and nearly all suffered from colonial income deflation and decreasing cereal consumption per capita. Right, a phenomenon that's been empirically documented very, very carefully in the case of India, has been documented or at least synthesized relatively less carefully in the Arab region, right? This led to widespread regional slums and bidonvilles, which were also central places for some of the national liberation struggles. And this also led to a reserve army of labor and this also led in turn to massive land concentration, whether in the hands of the domestic landed bourgeoisie, which was linked and kind of the social basis for colonialism, or whether this was alienated and held in the hands of settlers. Right. This led to a widespread national liberation movement, which I think is actually useful to think of as a peasant war. Right. You know, the first and most one of the first and kind of inklings of this was in Palestine from 36 to 1939, which was a widespread peasant war. Right. Then again in 1948 was yet another peasant war in Palestine as Arab volunteers went in from Tunisia, Egypt, Syria, and elsewhere. Land was one of the major issues in Egypt, in Gamal Abdel Nasser's Free Officers movement. Land was absolutely a central issue for the Tunisian Armed National Liberation Movement, the Algerian Armed National Liberation Movement. And all of these movements actually were fundamentally based on what Fanon called, you know, that most fundamental issue, the land, right? It was actually extremely central, even if in the post-colonial period, it became difficult to achieve the kind of dreams of the people who were involved in those struggles. This occurred, then this led to a period of national developmentalism from 1952 to 1970, where Arab republicanism became one vision for organizing society regarding popular participation, popular dignity, developmentalism against monarchism. And this, of course, occurring in the context of the US Cold War, which basically sought to destroy any process of independent development, be it capitalist or be it communist, right? So on the one hand, you had peasant and labor movements becoming organized region-wide from below, alongside a process of kind of popular republicanism from above. So you had from Iraq in 1958, where a central issue was, during the revolution, a central issue was land, the Ba'ath agrarian reforms from 1963 to 1970, the agrarian reforms that started to unfurl across Egypt in the late 1950s to 1960s, until they stalled in 1967, the Yemeni cooperative movements, especially in South Yemen, Algerian self-management on farms, and the Dhofar revolution in Oman. In all of these places, you saw changes in land tenure, redirections of credit, mounting food grain absorption, that is, people had more to eat, alongside import substitution, industrialization, and widespread nationalizations, right? But peasants and land were very central to the Arab Republican experiments. Of course, they met with the fist of the United States, right? As Justin was already talking about, the PL 480 Food for Peace went into Egypt, Tunisia, and later Algeria in order to try to avert more radical agrarian reforms. There was coup d'etat in 1963 in Iraq. The U.S. tried to spread a green revolution anywhere it could in the region. In 1967, the U.S. used Israel to carry out an attack against the Syrian Ba'ath, which was then increasingly influenced by Marxism and even by Maoism. Basically, the 1967 saw that the revolutionary Arabs, in the words of the British Foreign Office, were completely defeated, right? So what you had then from 1970s onwards, you had a kind of focus on middle peasant path, and also assuring the well-being of the poorer peasants, but without a focus on agrarian reform generally anymore, right? In the face of the Arab defeat of 1967, there was also a shift to kind of radicalization of regional alternatives. And of course, Palestine was an entry point, a compass, a catalyst, central in theory and practice to every Arab Marxist force. There was an increasing embrace of popular mobilization and people's war to challenge Israel and move on to regional popular development, and pan-Arabism was deemed necessary to challenge and encircle Israel. Right. The New Left region-wide put Palestine front and center. It was a point of pride for the Green Revolution in Libya, and revolutionary politics became sharply critical of the inability of Arab socialist republicanism under threat of war to combine internal planning and redistribution with support for people's war against Zionism. In the intellectual sphere, and this has been, I think, the most buried aspect of what was going on in the 1970s and 1980s. The intellectual history of this way of thinking about reorganizing the Arab region, it does not exist until this year, 2024, right? But region-wide, there was a huge interest in radical alternatives, and this is even under the decayed and besieged institutions of Arab republicanism. So the Algerian state was directly sponsoring meetings. The Egyptian Institute for National Planning was staffed by communists. There were economist conferences happening that were then largely attended by communist and Marxists under Sadat into the 1980s. Beirut Center for Arab Unity Studies was putting out regular studies about Arab nationalism and the role of agrarian reform, regional planning, and Kuwait, right, had an Arab Planning Institute, the Industrial Development Center of the Arab League. All of these institutions were thinking about pan-Arab alternatives for planning. Essentially, they were thinking about auto-centered or self-reliant development, which was watchword across the South in the wake of the 1964 meetings, which denounced global systems of unequal exchange. On the one hand, this was a critique of the developmentalist governments and their inability to kind of make industrialization at the service of development and development at the service of liberation. So what they wanted to do was submit industrialization to the broader imperative of national liberation. Against this background, China was actually central to their thinking about what a different model of the world could be. Through the Worker-Peasant Alliance, sovereign industrialization, agrarian reform, indigenous technological development. People like Samir Amin, who's maybe better known, but also Mohammed Douidar, Fawzi Mansour, Ramzi Zeki, and also later on even into the 90s or the 2000s, people in Palestine like George Karzom or Adel Samara were putting forward plans for auto-centered development with a central place for agriculture and a central place for peasants, with a central critique of technology transfer and an urge to reorient industrial and technological development to the satisfaction of developmental demands, right? Agriculture was totally central to this. And so here, many of you have probably heard the term agroecology, but already in the 1970s, in Tunisia, in the 1980s, in Palestine, there was a huge interest in the technical upgrading of so-called traditional, ecologically sound, and metabolically restorative techniques. People were interested in indigenous seeds, cultivars, long-term drought planning. They were critiquing the Green Revolution. They were focusing on the what to do about the relative aridity of the landscape. They were focusing on people-centered water management. This was through indigenous technology and indigenous methods of water management. This was happening in Morocco. This was happening in Tunisia. This was happening in Yemen. This was happening in the West Bank. Hisham Ouartini was working on this. And so it was happening region-wide. There was kind of this focus on what is now called appropriate technology, and that was then also called appropriate technology, and its role it could play in a kind of region-wide agricultural renaissance, right? In fact, this became widespread across the region, and as it was kind of this renaissance was ongoing, it was then wiped out. In a sense, it became more and more wiped from the face of the earth, right? So even though you had a last breath of it, I think through the first Intifada, which put the agrarian question front and center on every level, through focuses on holding onto the land, carrying out home planting, and working the land by means of agricultural cooperatives. There was Palestine saw this huge insihab ila al-dakhil, or withdrawal to within, with focus on agricultural techniques and appropriate technology manufacturing and processing. This was destroyed in essence, region-wide through the fall of the Soviet Union, which really closed that developmental space and opened a space instead for the US to advance on its project of regional neoliberalism, where it wanted some measure of development, and de-development in states that were holding on to some measure of the Arab nationalist project, at least through the confrontation with Israel. So what you saw, the fall of the USSR led to the siege of Iraq, Palestine being subject to Versailles, Oslo I and Oslo II, widespread so-called anti-terror legislation, which besieged politically and ideologically the Palestinian rejectionist, or in other words, national liberation forces. And the consequence that you saw throughout the 1990s, rural poverty soaring in the arenas of the Arab world, which were spared direct warfare, such as Egypt, where rural poverty reached near 100% by the 2000s. And then, of course, amidst this advance, you saw the U.S. aggression against Iraq in 2003, the attempted attack on Lebanon in 2006, the razing of Syria to the ground from 2011 onwards, the 2015 attempt to raze Yemen to the ground in 2015, the destruction of the state itself is even a theoretical platform for advocating peasant and working class interests in Libya. And what this in turn has meant in many ways is that the class struggle has shifted wholly, the national question has shifted to the plane of the defense of political sovereignty itself. And I think this is what we see not merely in Palestine, but also, for example, in Yemen and elsewhere in Syria, and for that matter, in Iran, where the central struggle, which is really cutting across the Arab-Iranian region at this point, is not really really for popular development, but it's actually much more actually for securing the political space needed for popular development, namely establishing the political sovereignty regime. So I'm going to stop there, and thanks everybody. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Max. And as I was listening to each of your talks, there was a lot of shared ideas amongst you. And I just want to remind folks before, I have lots of questions, so I can just like start asking questions. But I also want to encourage people to get into the chat and the Q&A and ask some questions. So, but I'll just start because there's none here yet. So, Justin, I've talked about Justin's podcast already, but I love your podcast. But I really liked your historical analysis around the different forms of colonial invasion as it relates to food and land and agriculture. And I'm just, in your research, in your historical research, one question I have for you is some of the potential lessons to be learned from these histories. These contexts are, of course, really different, as Max, you had mentioned, right? The experience of and the structures of franchise colonialism being, different. It's not entirely the same as settler colonial context, but you do have these sort of shared threads of colonial regimes and the way that they inflict violence on populations. And so that's one question I maybe have for both you and Max. Max, you talked a little bit about the response of the role of land tenure, land reform. I'm wondering if you can maybe speak a little bit more about that. And I also really liked how Yafa, you spoke your discussion around the role of people in refugee camps. And my understanding is like largely these are networks of women. And I think that role, these networks of care that you talk about in response to what I'm seeing, especially what Justin and Max are describing, of like networks of just immense violence and strategic violence on the land towards people. And what you're talking about are the way that people in these situations live and build networks of care in relationship to food and one another, and this kind of mutual aid. We talk about in the West and Canada and the US, we call it mutual aid, but it's really what you're describing. And so I was just thinking a lot about networks of violence in relationship to networks of care. And so if you have any, in the different ways that they exist, both simultaneously in these spaces, and how these communities are so focused on loving each other and caring for each other amidst all this violence. So I really appreciated that. So those are some of my thoughts around your comments, and I'm just wondering if each of you have something to share around lessons learned from some of these contexts. And in the context, Max, your history around the Arab region and the role of the Arab National Liberation Movement and also the sort of de-development that sort of got placed upon the region. I can't help but think both you and Yafa's stories, they're so different from what we hear in the West, both in popular media, politically. The story of the Arab region in the West is so incredibly paternalistic, and so incredibly discriminatory, and it reminds me so much of the narratives that I study here in so-called Canada, the colonial narratives. But I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about as well around the impacts of that. and the way it actually shapes political responses, the way that the rhetoric around the Arab region and this story that the West tells that is so different than the story that you just told, how that's shaped the situation that we're in right now. That was a lot of questions, I know. So, but we could take it, you know, Justin, if you're okay to go first, and then we'll go to Yafa and then Max.
Yeah, sure. Lessons learned. I mean, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot in the context of this current genocide that we're watching is, you know, one of the most vile things that I hear from pro-Israel people is like that the Hamas or the Palestinians brought this on themselves. So it's like Israel has exerted this level of control over what goes in and out of Gaza. They commented decades ago, one of their leaders commented that we're going to put Palestinians on a diet. We're going to make sure they don't starve to death, but we're going to put them on a diet. So the genocidal intention was expressly communicated for a long time, and the Israeli society has become more and more genocidal at a grassroots level. And so like I don't talk to people that are pro-Israel right now. I don't really see that dialogue. I don't really understand. I don't really think of genocidal, like an act of genocide, as a time to do like dialogue across the aisle. It's just not how I understand the world or teaching or education or debate or discussion. I just it's not the time for that in my view. But when someone who is sincere asked me this question, they were sort of like, do you think that there's something to this idea that like they made this sacrifice knowing what Israel was going to do? And what I said, and you know what I think is, there is no strategy that the Palestinians could have pursued that would have prevented this. And it's a real like, and it's often the case when you analyze indigenous settler warfare against this empire. The nature of the Anglo-American and the Zionist empire is to fight with those they know they can win, they can beat, to fight those who they have an enormous firepower advantage. Even though conduct of this war, you see Israel fairly methodically avoiding the indigenous warriors of Palestine and targeting civilians and hospitals and civilian infrastructure very methodically. And if you go back and read like Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz's Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, she cites a military writer called Grenier. I think his name is John Grenier, and the book is called The First Way of War. And The First Way of War, he describes how they always go straight for the agricultural fields, the food stores. The Americans, the British colonizers in the Americas always did that. So, you know, there's tons and tons and tons of lessons for sure. But one of them for me is like, don't get too excited about your critique of indigenous people's resistance strategies. For the most part, there isn't generally a strategy that you can adopt to protect more or less defenseless civilians against an utterly depraved empire with all the firepower in the world. That's just the top of my mind right now. But I don't want to. I could go through 10 more, but I'll just leave that one for people to think about.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, it does sort of remind me of all of like the recent things where the recent situations where something, you know, even the other day, when I was reading an Al Jazeera article, and it was, saying how Hamas had agreed, and then Israel was still going. They still decided to invade. Like it's one of those. I think we've all read this over the past 6 or 7 months, where you're like, wait, they still chose to do it. And I think that's what you're saying, is no matter what they decide, and we've seen this with the history of the Oslo, like all of the different all of the different situations and circumstances since the Nakba, right? That it doesn't. They choose one direction and they still get, invaded and occupied. Okay, Yafa, you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for making these really amazing points and linkages, and especially when you talked about these big networks of violence and how, yeah, all we have is these networks that are kind of resisting, at least at the grassroots level. And it reminded me of a conversation that I've had also with the women about this kind of topic. And they were saying, I think I had like the simplest question of like, why do we do these stuff? Why do we resort to these kinds of networks? And the answer that kept coming up is that as refugees, as Palestinian refugees, you don't have, or you're always systematically excluded from active participation, from policy making, whether we're speaking about something as far as the Oslo Agreement, which the Palestinian refugees were never consulted about. And it was this agreement where basically our rights to our lands was given up in a way, and we weren't asked if we are willing to give up our lands. And it's constantly this revoking of rights of refugees. So Palestinian refugees don't have any active political representations. We don't participate in decision making on the Palestinian political arena because the refugees are the displaced ones outside political territories of Palestine, Israel, geographically, and they're not included in how decisions are made or what is being discussed. And the women and the young people kept bringing up the idea that because we're not represented institutionally, the only way that we do get our voice across and that we do have this political participation and make decisions on what happens to our community is through these networks, is through these alternative initiatives, whether they're food sharing or whether they're educational initiatives that are taking place at the level of the refugee camp, or whether there are other collaborative grassroots kind of mutual aid initiatives. Like, we don't get to participate in whatever humanitarian aid policy there is or country policy that targets refugees. So all the decisions are made on our behalf. And the way we get to make our own decisions is by setting up these small networks of resistance that actually do implement the things that we do care about and we do want to make them happen. We can't make them through voting for someone. We just don't have that option. We make them by crowdfunding and picking up herbs and doing these kinds of things. You also raised a really important question on representation, and I think that is so important to talk about, especially in these times. And one story I always keep talking about is that in a refugee camp, you always have all kinds of foreign tourists who are either the journalists that are covering everything that's happening, or the researcher, or the international aid worker, and the Palestinians in general are always the target of this extractivist community of people extracting stories and extracting photos. And when they're extracting photos, the Palestinians always end up at the tired, hungry, barefoot kid on someone's PowerPoint or on someone's progress report. And this is the only way that the world gets to know you. And in my refugee camp, we used to have a name for them. We used to call them UNICEF photos. Not because they were exclusive to UNICEF, but because there was this pattern of always representing the Palestinian, even beyond times at war. But the Palestinian was always reduced to a tired, hungry kid with ripped clothing, even when there was no war. That was what the Palestinian looked like. And one of the repercussions of reducing the Palestinian to that, and without recognizing what kind of resistances are there, what kind of networks of care are there, what kind of networks of agency are there, what the women are doing, what the food sharing is rescuing, what power is entailed there. When we don't reflect all of that, and we just reflect the child with the ripped clothes, there is that risk of the world thinking, or the world getting that idea that, well, Palestinians can hardly feed themselves right now. How are they going to participate in policy making, or how are they going to sit on the same table as other state members and become UN members? How are they going to make their own state? They're people who can hardly keep their stuff together, and all they're thinking about is the starvation, and these are legitimate problems. However, you cannot reduce Palestinians to a person that is struggling with that. There's so many modes of resistance, and it has to be acknowledged. There has to be more light on the different ways that the Palestinians are organizing. So I just think representation matters so much, especially at these times. And I worry that we cannot see enough of how Palestinians are fighting in this time. We're always asking, how are they accessing food? What kind of alternative networks are being set up in Gaza? What kind of mediations, what kind of routes are people taking to survive? And we don't see enough of that. We don't know about that because obviously the news isn't shedding enough light on that. And I feel like it contributes to the dehumanization of Palestinians. A Palestinian is that child who's dying, and they cannot be something else. So I really think that we really need to reconsider what are the risks of that and how much incomprehensive that is. And yeah, so it's just a lot to think about. But yeah.
Thank you for that, Yafa. Max.
So, you know, I think there's a few things going on in terms of the misrepresentation of the Arab region. I think there's kind of two faces to the coin. I think on the one hand, you know, there's an industry like no other that is based on a series of misrepresentations, right? Not merely the most racist misrepresentations based on anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian in particular, and anti-Muslim sentiment, which then have accompanying discourses of kind of terrorism and dictatorship and extremist tendencies in Islam and so forth, which are very apparent, right? But I think there's kind of maybe a more subtle form of misrepresentation also which occurs, which is blocking from view actually just the real centrality of land and agriculture and peasants to the history of the region itself, even from more critical perspectives, right? To the point that when most people are thinking of, I mean, I think Palestine, it's starting to shift a little bit, but you know, with the rest of the region, certainly, when people think about it, it's not like the fact that there's an agrarian question that doesn't come to mind. And what are forms of agricultural production? And what is the history of resistance? And is there a history of agrarian reform? And for that matter, is there a history of peasant revolution? You know, I think that would be like the last thing that comes to mind when most people think about the Arab region, including Palestine, right? You know, the Palestine's very world-shaking peasant revolutions, no one even thinks of them. I don't, you know, I'm exaggerating when I say nobody, but like no one is thinking about 36 to 39, and no one is thinking about the first Intifada, right, as actually enormously influential and failed, but nevertheless enormously influential and important revolutions that in their time riveted people's attention, and they're kind of categorically erased, not only by you know, the right-wing blather and babble, but also you know by a lot of discourses that I think are much more superficially sympathetic, but maybe focus on legal aspects and rights, which could be important for shifting public opinion, but aren't focusing on these kind of central instances of mobilization that I know in Palestinian political thought and practice are, of course, very, 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 very important, and you know, are probably less important in the West or even known about, really. And I think it also applies, you know, to the Arab revolutions more broadly. You know, people like suddenly started paying attention in 2011, but those were not the most progressive Arab revolutions. Let's be real about it. You know, the progressive ones were like 1958 or in Iraq in 1962, in Yemen and so forth, right? Like these were ones that really changed the productive structure of whole societies. And, you know, the regnant Orientalism and Islamophobia and emphasis on rentier state, you know, even on their superficially more left iterations, really cover those things up, I think, and we should do better.
Thanks, Max. I have a question here from Chantel. How can we shift ideological perspectives that glorify colonial practices? Can we use food or food systems to change the way people perceive their own ideologies? And I'm not sure if they're talking about in the West or, you know, I think maybe actually contextualizing that a bit. And if you have anything to add about who it is, you know, what does it mean to shift ideological perspectives, and how does that actually happen in a culture or across cultures? That would also be helpful. Does anybody have a response to that? I mean, we could talk about some of the comparisons around colonial, the glorification of colonial practices, both in North America, and the use of those sort of ideologies globally.
Yeah, I mean, making the desert
Historically.
bloom, right? That's making the
Mhm.
desert bloom is colonial, is an ideological colonial glorification. And like the, you know, with North America, there's a whole idea that environmentalism started when Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. You know, I resisted reading Silent Spring for a long time. I actually read it the first time a year ago or so, and it's not bad. It's like she's just talking about like how chemical poisons poison ecosystems. It's a you know, accessible book about that, but it's it's really preposterous to think that that's the beginning of you know, concern for the environment or concern for living in harmony. So, and that's, you know, that's the kind of ideology that I think if you're like an environmentally inclined person, like or food systems inclined person, you have to have you have to go back to indigenous and pre-colonial and, you know, indigenous conceptions of how to live on the land, and that's what it's that's the basis for building an environmentalism, and that means rejecting essentially all of the tradition of you know, Madison Grant and Byron and Theodore Roosevelt to like create national parks and go and shoot animals there, and you know, make indigenous communities into like zoo exhibits and so on.
Yeah, if I may add, I feel like that is such a good question because I think that's always like one of the biggest arguments made to kind of legitimize settler colonialism in Palestine in the Palestinian context. We're always told about the great achievements in terms of technology or innovation and startups in Israel, and that's always seen as such an achievement that, you know, the Palestinians should be thankful for, or that, you know, this has actually brought development, as Justin mentioned. And what Justin was talking about kind of brought up to me this research that was done about how the state of Israel has invested so much in the reforestation of Palestinian lands, and where they were spreading pine trees everywhere because, you know, Palestine looked quite too brown or too deserty, and it had to be green enough and to give that European aspect. And actually, what was happening is because the pine trees were absorbing so much water, It was not suitable for the climate and the soil and the ecology of these Palestinian lands. It was absorbing all the water from the soil that was actually depriving all the plants and the herbs and the smaller organisms in the soil. So all the herbs that we as Palestinians would collect and would use as spices, or that we would use for our food, they're dying because the pine trees sucked all the water, and all of the other organisms are dying in the soil, so that you can have this green atmosphere. And yeah, it brings up the idea of, why are we legitimizing these colonial practices? But again, if we don't go deep and talk about these things, and these studies are not made, and these talks are not had with the local people who are dependent on these herbs and on these plants, we cannot know that, or like it's not exposed enough, or there isn't enough visibility to this impact of these colonial practices. I think just the short answer that I'm trying to get to is starting by talking to the locals, to the natives of these lands, because they know it more than anything else. They're the ones that are impacted first. I think it starts from there, and having just these critical debates and discussions where people who are native to the land and know it more than anyone else can really have the lead on these discussions, and just recognizing that, yeah, I guess from my perspective.
Thanks, Yafa. Max, do you have anything to add? Okay, my other question I have is from somebody who, from like when they registered, they asked a question. So what is can anybody talk a little bit more about the state of, I talked a bit about this in my intro, but do any of you have more to say around the state of growing lands and seed saving in Palestine right now? What folks are doing? Of course, things are, we know, like, agricultural lands are being decimated, but do any of you have any more insights around responses and things like that? Whether there's anything, able to be produced locally at this point?
I think I'll just jump in to say that the question is, I kind of like view that question as an opportunity to talk about the primacy of the military struggle at times like these. Like there won't be any way to do this. If they were to make something, the Israelis would just destroy it. So there's always like this resilience conversation that at this moment, in moments like this, like they have to win the war. The Palestinians have to win the war, and then there are any number of things that can happen with rebuilding and building a sovereign system and breaking the siege. But until that happens, like in the context of total Israeli control over life and death and everything, it's very difficult to talk about those kinds of agricultural practices. I mean, I'm sure there are, and I don't know much about them because I am focused, admittedly, on the military question right now. So I'll defer to others to answer them, but I just want to take this opportunity to mention the military question is kind of overrides these at times like these.
Does anybody want to add to that?
Sorry. Yeah, no, but I could very quickly just say that there's a lot that we don't know at the moment. I don't think we're able to survey what the conditions are, but what I do know is that from before October 7th, there was a lot of talks about how also agricultural areas there was this aid dependency that also Justin pointed out, that was just there's so much money that was being pumped into creating this aid dependency that even structures, mostly such as greenhouses, were mostly being set up by USAID and other organizations. And then, of course, these organizations have their own restrictions to who gets greenhouses and who doesn't, and what side are you on, and do we allow interacting with you. And it was getting so intense to the extent that with aid dependency, there was projects of like supplying or providing milk and food to schools, and some schools were getting it and others were not because of, oh, are you associated with certain political factions or not? And it was just how this aid dependency, how this aid of food and even through agricultural land was creating this fragmentation and isolation. And some people get greenhouses and some people don't. Some people's lands get supplies and some people don't. So I think it really contributed to kind of a real destruction of what is, or what was probably at some point, this farmer cooperation. So it's, yeah, it's something very sad to see, but hopefully it would be something that would be rebuilt, but I don't know what that looks like.
Thanks, Yafa. I see Deb Barton has a question. Deb, how do you feel about asking it directly? I can also read it if you want.
Go ahead and read it. Well,
okay. Okay. Oh, it just disappeared. Hold on. Okay. Indigenous nations like the Haudenosaunee consider all our relations as related to food, which includes animals as well as plants and medicines, which have spiritual significance as well. Justin referred to the historical annihilation of the buffalo and beaver, but what do we know about the animals who are also part of the food system in Gaza that have been destroyed through the bombardments?
or even in
I was actually thinking. Go ahead.
I mean, Yafa could also speak to, I just wondered if animals were important in the refugee camps Yafa was referring to.
Yeah, that is such an important question. So because refugee camps have such a very limited space, so the camp that I come from, which I talked about, again, has a space of 0.2 kilometers square. And I probably forgot to mention the fact that this was a camp that was established initially to accommodate 2,000 people back in 1948, and today it hosts an estimate of 30,000. So you have this extremely high level of congestion because people cannot move out due to socioeconomic exclusion. They're not allowed to participate in the labor market. They cannot be legally employed. They cannot purchase property. So people are kind of forced to always come back to the camp. And so the camp just keeps growing in size, but it cannot actually grow horizontally. So it grows vertically with very unstable structures. And of course, there is no room for farming or animals. I often talk about how people try to duplicate the space by creating recreational spaces or gardens on rooftops, where rooftops are like the most important part of the camp. It's where you have weddings, it's where you have parks or gardens or playing spaces for kids. But yeah, you cannot fit animals on a rooftop. Some people have chicken, and I think that's the best we could do. But again, this is all reflecting this, what we call this violent separation of native natures. You hear stories of your parents and your grandparents being able to cultivate their own land and grow certain vegetables and grow certain plants and certain flowers and use them in certain ways, and you feel that this is your native nature, and then you're forcefully separated from that and being forced to make home in a nature of concrete and rooftops, and it's just this violent separation. I'm sorry I didn't get to tackle the question of animals in Gaza specifically, but again, it's one of the things that I think, since we have such little insight to what is happening, it's hard to cover everything on the news. So I do not have enough information about that. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Yafa. I mean, I've read some terrible things about like dogs, but I haven't read. I don't actually know. I did actually try and look this up. But Justin or Max, do you have anything to say about genocide and livestock or animals, broadly speaking, or specifically in Palestine or in the Arab region?
Yeah, Max, do you want to go first, or? Yeah, okay. I'll just a couple of things. I mean, sheep, bees, all the agriculture. I don't know if people saw my answer, but I kind of typed an answer for Deb. Sheep and bees and chickens, all the all the kind of animals that you would expect. There's a Palestinian songbird that's their national bird, and yeah, the Israelis kill everything. It's very deliberate. They understand the dogs or the sheep or whoever is there to be part of, Palestinians, and they kill them. They also, I saw a video of an Israeli soldier like basically taking a puppy away from its mother of one of the street dogs, and then being chased by the mother and laughing. And they post that video with like as like a funny, thing. He's running away from a dog after stealing the puppy. So it's yeah, and then Afghanistan did that too. Afghanistan was really interesting because there are like in the records that Julian Assange kind of put out there, the I don't know what they're called, the Afghan War Diary, I think it was called. And in there, I did some, like, lots of people were going through that and trying to find things, and that's how they found evidence that there was like kill teams, right? Like Australians and Americans that were just going and killing people in villages. And that was what they were devoted to doing. But there was also lots of cases where Allied soldiers would shoot Afghan dogs. They just shoot Afghan dogs. And these are like all American dog lovers, right? Like they show like moving stories of them coming home and hugging their dogs. Like, their dog recognizes them after their time, their tough tour of duty in Afghanistan. But like that tour of duty in Afghanistan included shooting Afghan dogs. So yeah, it's definitely it's never absent, Deb. Like you'll never find a case where that's not there.
Max, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I know when I was living in Gaza in 2010, the farmers were showing that, for example, they were using a rabbit, showing that the soil had been heavily contaminated by white phosphorus, and there were they were actually desperate for. It's a good example of the kind of de-development that's imposed on the Strip. They didn't have the capacity even for appropriate testing of it. They were like giving me these rabbits, and they were like, or pictures, and they were sitting with me because I was doing writing on agriculture, and they were like, can you help us get this to an agricultural college? I was like, or like the proof of this to an agricultural college. I said, I would love to, but like, it was not, it was going to be very difficult to get any sort of like a sample back to the United States. Like, forget it, right? Like, I would be stopped, and it was not going to be, but it was, I think it was kind of, it kind of compressed a lot of the tragedies that are imposed on the Palestinian people. I mean, and it was, and yeah, I mean, I think another family I spoke to had one of the major dairy producers in the Gaza Strip, were also just kind of was completely hammered by the 2008-2009 war. It was kind of systematically decimated, and just another example of how the de-development through war is just targeting kind of the evisceration and evaporation of the productive capacity of people there.
Thank you, Max. Man, Justin, that story of the puppy that's like, that really hit me. That's really sad. Yafa, do you want to respond? Do you want to ask this question, or was it Fatima who had asked this question? Fatima, you could also go ahead and ask your question directly. Otherwise, I can, or Yafa, if you want to just sort of summarize and respond.
Yeah, she did mention that she is using the phone and that's why she couldn't put it in the Q&A. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, if you're able to, I'd be happy, but if not, she was asking about the kind of potential or possible solidarities that could exist between Lebanese that live in areas surrounding the Palestinian refugee camps, and specifically the camp that I come from, and just if the food sharing practices or other kind of collaboration practices were kind of available across the borders of the camp. Since also the Palestinians and the Lebanese, as Justin has pointed out, also Max, that have both suffered from the Israeli aggression. So there is kind of this common ground. And I do, even though that because the levels of struggles between the citizens and non-citizens of Lebanon are very different, so you do have very different levels of kind of solidarities or what kind of issues people come together about. But I always did witness these movements of solidarity between Palestinian women and Lebanese women and other groups of refugees in Lebanon, such as the Syrians or the Iraqis. I'll mention 2 episodes where, for example, on the refugee to refugee level, I remember during the pandemic where Palestinians were not eligible for healthcare in Lebanon, and they were trying to use crowdfunding to kind of set up primitive ways or primitive clinics in Burj al-Barajni refugee camp to kind of respond to how they're going to deal with people who are infected and have to provide them at least some forms of care. And there was this clinic set up in Burj al-Barajni, and when I went back to check on my parents and volunteered at the clinic, one of the things I noticed there that most of the people who were there were not even Palestinian, but they were other refugees from the city. There were Syrian refugees, there were African migrants, and there were all these migrants who were undocumented because of how unfair the Lebanese policy is towards refugees. So I have these people who lose their visa or who have to cross the border from Syria in an unauthorized manner because the state decides to shut the borders in the face of people fleeing violence. And so you have all these people who are afraid to go to a hospital, who are afraid to go to a state-owned facility because they're going to get deported. They're going to get care for COVID, but they're going to get deported. So what they do is that they end up entering these refugee camps where no one's going to ask you for an ID, and everyone is in as much trouble as you are. So people there are providing you care without even asking you for identification or money, or you're not at risk. And so you have this camp that transforms into a space of rescue because people are looking after each other because they're all in this refugee status. Solidarity with the Lebanese community is quite different. I remember this project that is called Sufra, which was this food truck where a group of Palestinian refugee women, also from Burj al-Barajni, they established this food truck. They first established like this small catering kind of business where they're doing traditional Palestinian food. And then they were like, well, we want to sell this to like everyone in Lebanon because we want to like break the boundaries and we want to like establish this collaboration with the Lebanese host community. And so they did a crowdfunding campaign and they raised funds to buy a food truck. And the food truck just travels all around Lebanon to talk about this traditional Palestinian food and culture. And when the project grew, now it employs 40 women who are Lebanese women, also from marginalized backgrounds and from slum areas. Iraqi women, Syrian women. So I have these 40 amazing women who have so much to bond on, and they're all speaking about their culture through food. And they have also a really good documentary about it. It's probably about the earlier stages of the project, but it's called Sufra, which in Arabic means the table of the food or feast. And it just brings together, and there's many similar projects where Lebanese women and Palestinian refugee women and Syrian women do find spaces to bond and somehow get over these policies. And I think it's the same of what you mentioned, Sarah, as like these networks of violence that are at state level, but then there's networks of care that arise to resist them, and they're very grassroots, but they're still growing and kind of fighting against the institutional networks of violence. Yeah.
Thank you, Yafa. I have I have a lot of questions too about the way that solidarity at least I'm thinking of it maybe from more of the Americas, both North and South America, around the way that solidarities get taken up, and then the rhetoric around solidarities that are very pragmatically articulated in ways that really work for folks on the ground at a grassroots level, but sometimes get manipulated in ways that can be really problematic. Anyway, I don't. When you think about a lot of the rhetoric around pan-indigeneity and things like that, and the way that gets taken up. So you just had me sort of thinking a bit about that. But I really like your discussions around the networks of care that you experience in those contexts. So thanks for that. I think that's it for questions, unless anybody in the Zoom audience has any questions to ask. Maybe it's almost 3 o'clock, so our time is up together. One thing I wanted to ask the three of you is if you have any suggestions around organizations or networks, communities that folk could support. We did have a couple of people asking questions around, like, what do we do? How do we support? And I think that's a really common question for these talks. So maybe that's one thing that you could leave us with, a final message or an offer of somewhere, somebody, some way to support.
Well, this afternoon I'm gonna head over to King's College Circle of U of T, see what's going on there. No, just to go for a walk, whatever,
All right, since we're on the topic of food, the internet is filled with organizations that deal with food productions in different Palestinian territories, whether that's olive oil or thyme or any other local productions. And just look for the ones that are like just in collaboration or mostly done by Palestinian farmers. And there's loads of them. If you want later, I could supply a list. And I think ones that provide direct support to Palestinian lands would be really great.
Thanks, Yafa. And yes, please do support your local student encampment. For sure. Bring food and anything that folks might need. Usually a lot of them have lists as well of things that they need, I've noticed. Max, any other thing you want to add around ways to support, organizations to support?
I mean, the Union of Agricultural Work Committees is doing a great job as always. But I think go to the encampment. It's an organization to support and stop the war.
Yeah, I'll put the link for the Union of Agricultural Work Committees here. That was one I was going to mention. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I see that Nahid, you have a question for the panelists, and you can close us out with your last question.
I think you'd have to unmute him probably, because
do I have to unmute
you have to like ask him to unmute.
I think you did it
now.
Okay.
It works now. I'm not sure it came up, and maybe people know of the film Foragers by Jumana Mana. And when Yafa was giving the presentation, it reminded me of how Israel took over kind of some of the indigenous, the business of herbs that were so critical to Palestinian culture, and Zatar, and banning people from foraging. So it's a 2022 film, and I think that's a good resource for people. I'd also mentioned the UBC encampment doesn't accept random food anymore. It was just an issue of oversupply and managing excess. But the students are so incredibly inspiring, and they repurpose a lot of that food to Crab Park or other shelters. And yeah, the community has been incredibly supportive. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nahid. And yes, Charles, thank you for putting our working group is doing, this is sort of a series. Our next one is a film screening of Aisha's story. All the details are in the link there on May 29th. The screening is at 6:30, the discussion is at 7:30, and we hope to see folks there. And thank you all for sharing in this discussion with me and for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having us. Thank you everyone for being here.
All right, bye everyone. Have a good day, and hope to see some of you at your neighborhood encampment. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.